will continue to grow or it will run out of resources and it won't grow. So there's like a 50-50 chance on these becoming a thunderstorm. And what you want to do is you want to pick one, you want to focus in on it, and just keep an eye on it. As a thunderstorm developing can take several hours. So, but once they start building, once they get really tall, right here, this is called the maturation stage, where they're almost a daddy, if you would. The baby's not out yet, but this is where all the good stuff takes place. You got your updraft growing on one side, you've got the individual downdraft going down the other side, and you've got this tall towering cloud, and it's going to start anviling out. The reason it anvils out, I'm sure everybody's heard the term thunderstorm anvil. The reason it does that is because it reaches the top of the stratosphere and it has nowhere to go. So it begins to flatten out against the top of the atmosphere. Once it does that, once it's producing, rain, lightning, and hail, you are now in a supercell thunderstorm, or you have what's called the mesocyclone. Not every mesocyclone is going to produce a tornado. You could have a really rough thunderstorm. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a tornado. Just a lot of lightning, a little bit of hail. It's just depending on if the conditions are right. So trying to find a thunderstorm on a day where they're forecast to develop, you just keep an eye on these fluffy popcorn clouds and just watch them grow. Now, when it comes to where you need to be at for a thunderstorm, the safest place to be to observe it and to get a full body perspective of the storm, you want to be in the southeast quadrant behind the storm. You never want to get out ahead of a storm, and you want to keep your distance, because thunderstorms, they are a living, breathing creature, and they're not constrained to all the typical rules like we are on the road. They can go wherever they want. So even if a storm has a frontal system pushing it along, it can still go left, right, backwards, or grow big enough to envelop you in just a few minutes. So that's why you want to keep a good, safe distance from it. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the team called TwistX. These are university professors that were out, studying tornadoes. They did a really good job. The professor had his son and a longtime colleague along with him, and they were at a pretty good distance, but the tornado intensified so quickly. With them, they were almost a mile away from the center of the storm, and that tornado grew to almost 2 miles wide, engulfing them, and sadly, it took their life, even though they did everything properly. The storms are just so dramatic. They can do things on a dime. And so even the best chasers out there, there's always going to be a risk, no matter how well you plan, no matter how good you have a backup plan. Sometimes plan A, B, and C are going to fail. So, but you want to be right there in that southeast quadrant of the storm, and it'll give you a good view of any tornadoes that are going to be developing. You'll be able to see the circulation. You'll be able to see the wall cloud. You'll be able to see the beaver tail. Stuff like that. Now, there's one, besides the popping bass and stuff, because you want to look for the inflow band. Like I said, it's called a beaver tail. I don't know if this one, here you go. Most thunderstorms, well, all thunderstorms will be developed. They have what's called a beaver tail. That's the term, but it's technically an inflow band. It trains out behind the storm, and that's where the moist inflow air goes into the thunderstorm. So you want to look for that beaver tail and make sure if you can see that, you're in the right spot. So behind the thunderstorm, you have a thing what's called a rear flank downdraft, or RFD. That's pretty intense winds. And it's kind of like when a thunderstorm comes through and you feel those real gusty winds in the beginning. That's basically the thunder. It's not blowing, it's actually sucking the air and all that moist air up into the storm. The rear downdraft, or RFD, is where all of that's coming behind the storm. And it can be as quite as intense as the beginning as well. So let's get that. Okay, we got that. Now I got you all back in front of me. Everybody following so far?
Oh yeah, I'm good. Go, Tim.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yep.
Well, I just wrote that down. I'm going to try that. Yeah. I thought you were going to tell me it was a delicacy. Because I don't know about beaver tail. I know Canadians are a little weird sometimes. No beaver was harmed in the filming of this. But yeah, if you see a beaver's tail, it's quite a treat because you get to see that full flow. But you want to remain south and east of any thunderstorm. That's going to be your safest option. It's going to be passing off to your north. But when you're in position to where you're observing the thunderstorms, like I said, the thunderstorm can change on a dime. They can change direction. You know, these things are being controlled by God Himself. So a storm can turn on a dime instantly. You can be watching a tornado and it looks like it's tracking a different way, but then all of a sudden that tornado is coming towards you. That brings me to my next point. I don't know if you've all watched a lot of storm chasing videos and stuff, but if you're looking at a tornado and it doesn't look like it's moving much, then that's a pretty good indication that it's coming towards you. So that means you need to get out of Dodge. Now, when you get into your position and setup, you're in the southwest or southeast quadrant of the storm. You're getting your camera set up. You're sitting there. You're good. You're shooting your shots. You want to always have in the back of your mind that you have an escape route. You want to know what roads you're going to be able to take if that storm turns towards you. You're going to want to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. So you want to know what nearby roads you can go. You want to avoid dirt roads. Dirt roads are not your friend when you're storm chasing.
They're your enemy.
Yeah. Number one, they get muddy really fast. You get stuck, and you do not want to get stuck out in the middle of a field with a big old tornado bearing down on you. So stick to blacktop roads, no gravel roads. You know, down here we call gravel roads dirt roads, but they're not your friend. They wash out. They're susceptible to flash flooding. And you want to stick to the blacktop, or down here in the south, the gray top, because all our roads are in terrible shape in America.
Yep.
Yeah. But you also want to make sure that you have a way to get warnings and stuff. And while you're out there, you also want to have a way to visualize the storms on radar. And there's bunches of programs out there. A lot of people use, let me see what I had on there. We used to use the Spotter Network maps and stuff like that, but I've transitioned over. We use professionals tracking software. We use WSB3, but I've just recently started also using a platform called WeatherWise. It is they have a free version, but then they also have a paid version, which is $1.99 a week, and it gives you access to real-time satellite and radar information. When you're out in the field, you don't want to have to wait that 5 minutes for your Weather Channel app to update the swath.
Yep.
So programs like WSB3 and WeatherWise, those are going to give you live, instant views of what's going on with that storm. So you can watch it where it's tracking. It shows the roads and your position in relation to that storm. So you can visualize where that storm's moving in relation to you, so that you know that if it's turning your way or whatever, you need to turn around and get out of there really quick. Yeah. So
I use WeatherWise the same as Tim does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for in the field we use WeatherWise. For forecasting the weather, we use WSB3. There's a huge learning curve with that, and it's more expensive. But WeatherWise is a great platform just for you to have. I do suggest I don't advertise for them or nothing like that, but I do suggest you get at least the pro version of it. And again, that's $1.99, but there is the free version of the app. And the good thing about it is cross-platform. If you download it on your iPhone or your Android, you can also download it on your PC or Mac without having to pay for a separate subscription fee like you would with other weather apps and stuff like that. They want you to pay for the Windows version, and then they want you to pay for the phone version. So everybody can just write that down, put it in the back of your head. It's a great thing to have when you're out there following these storms so that you know where they're at. It shows you the centers of the storms. There's all kinds of things you can get on there and fool around with. But one of the cool things about it is it shows you where the spotters are, the train spotters, the people that know, you know, that storm inside and out. So if you're in doubt where you should be, you look where all them are gathering, and that's where you want to be.
Yep. The spotter app is, you definitely want to be using it if you're stuck out there and you need help. Then you can get a hold of someone. They come
Yeah, and Spotter Network requires you. I recommend everybody getting a account set up on there. They require you to go through their storm chaser training. It's got hundreds of different pages of information on storm chasing and stuff like that that you can go through. It's a quick little 15-20 minute test, but then they award you a spotter ID, and you can plug that into the Spotter Networks app on your phone, and that's going to show you on the map where everybody else is. So for us, our team of chasers, even our office staff, they all have that app open so that we know where they are in relation to storms, so we can give them a call and say, hey, just are you aware of what you got coming your way? Or that we can keep track of them in the field and say, you need to go this way, you know, that storm's turning.
Yep.
So it's just a great way to have good situational awareness. And that's the biggest thing when you're out there, you know, capturing Mother Nature's fury. You want to have good situational awareness, just like in the military. You want to know what's going on around you. Thunderstorms can move pretty fast. Storms coming with the frontal system, they can be charging as fast as, you know, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. So it's literally like a wrecking ball coming through. The sky's the limit on the speed. Thunderstorms that aren't associated with the frontal system typically tend to move a lot slower because they're not tied. They don't have any mechanism pushing them around. They're just out there floating, going where they want to. Typically, thunderstorms associated with a line of storms or a frontal system that's coming through, those can go, you know, as slow as the frontal system's going. So, or they can go super, super fast. Yes. So with some of the severe weather alerts that come through, you'll hear them say in the wording that this storm is moving so and so at 60 miles an hour. You know, so they'll always give you a relative speed of the storms, and you know, storms moving through fast is a good thing because that means if there's any tornadoes that are going to develop, they're going to get drug along, but they're not going to stick around. And versus a thunderstorm that's not tied to a frontal system, that's just out there by itself being a menace, you know, those tornadoes can be on the ground, you know, for a very long time. Frontal systems, tornadoes that are associated with frontal systems, they can be on the ground for a long time too. You know, 1,000 miles. It's not unheard of for a tornado to be on the ground that long. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. Hmm. Yes. Yes. Well, first of all, you do want a good heavy duty tripod. You want a tripod that's going to allow you to have connections for center weights and stuff on it. Because sometimes those RFD winds can be 30, 40 miles an hour. I was out filming during the first winter storm that came through, not this last weekend, but the weekend before, where we was having the freezing rain.
Yep.
And I had my ring light attached to a battery pack and I had it clamped onto my tripod, and the wind sent it all flying over because I forgot to secure it. I was walking and I didn't want to carry much weight, so I left my weight bags at home. And so never leave home without your weight sacks.
You gotta have your weight. It's yep.
You can get the little bags that most tripods have a hook in the center of them, and that hook is dedicated for hanging on those little weight bags. You can put a little brick in them, whatever you need to keep that center of gravity down and help it stand up in the wind. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But you also want your setup to be real simple too. So you want to be able to grab your tripod, throw it in the back seat when you got to run, tuck tail, and get out of there. So as a photographer, you're not really going to be out ahead of the storm unless you're just brave and you experienced storm chaser and you're going to be up there. We're going to be up in the guts of the storm. We're going to be doing the stuff that we tell everybody else not to. But if you want to be able to keep that equipment light, but you also want to be able to keep it sturdy when you're out there. So I definitely recommend getting weights for your tripod just to protect that center of gravity. The RFD winds can be pretty intense. You also want to, if you're in that back section of the storm, which is a sweet spot, you're not going to have to worry about rain and stuff like that. It's when you're, out there chasing it and doing stuff in the danger zone. The one place you want to avoid is the core of a storm. You never want to punch a storm. It drives me nuts when fellow storm chasers drive through what they call punching the core. And this is where they drive their car right through the core of the storm. And that's where all the hail's falling, damaging and beating up their rentals and stuff. That drives me nuts. There's no reason to intentionally damage your vehicle.
Oh no.
DeLorean.
DeLorean, yeah.
DeLorean.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
No, stay out of the hail core as much as possible.
Yeah, I always shoot with a wide lens. It is a wide lens because you're getting to capture everything, I guess. But now I'm not a professional photographer like most of you guys, so I didn't have formal training. But I use my 4K cameras, I use my GoPros, and because my main focus out there is not really photographing the storm. I'm out there gathering data and warning people working for the weather. But I also want to get the money shot too to help us out to bring in viewers because we're nonprofit, so everything we do is based off of views and stuff like that, and the generosity of our donors. So, but it's really an adventure. I love using. We use the we just introduced a 360 camera that we're going to be putting out in the field this storm season to give everyone a 360-degree view of the storms. So that's going to be fun. So
looking forward to that, Tim.
yeah. Yeah.
Oof.
Oh yeah. You people go through what's called warning fatigue. I think that's the proper term for it, to where, you know, every time a severe storm comes through that's capable of producing a tornado, they sound the alarms. It's not because a tornado's coming, it's because a tornado is possible with any of these supercell storms. And it's better to be warned than and go take shelter for a few minutes versus blowing it off like so many people have done. And that's where you get killed. That one time that you ignore it is when the tornado is going to steamroll your house. So if you have my luck.
It's kind of like,
So
oh yeah.
but yeah, warning fatigue is a big thing. It was the same thing like with this winter weather with us forecasting it these past 2 weeks. People didn't believe, but before we had these last two winter storms, we thought we were going to have a bigger storm before that. It didn't pan out. So people was thinking, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You know, Mother Nature's fickle. If at the end of the day, she's going to do what she's going to do. You know, we're as forecasters, we're only able to give you the best guess, because that's all science is a best guess. We take all the data that we have, we plug it into the computers, and we're at their mercy. That's just how forecasting is today.
Yeah.
And something that I like to point out to everybody is like the National Weather Service is US's, weather authority down here. And since they've received budget cuts and stuff, a lot of budget cuts, they're not able to do things like regular balloon launches. Those have been cut in half. So with less balloon launches, that's less data going into the forecast models. And so it's not giving us the full picture. Versus if we would have had the other half of balloon launches to let us know at that particular time what the atmosphere was doing. So, and that's what it comes down to. And that's why the forecasts have been kind of hit and miss here lately. It's not because of your weatherman, it's just because the amount of data, and we have to give you the best assessment with what we have. So.
Oh boy. Tim, you want to explain that one?
Yeah, I will. Cloud seeding is a real thing, but it does not work how people think it works. Cloud seeding, in order for cloud seeding to happen, you have to have moisture already in the atmosphere. If there's no moisture, you cannot make it rain. And cloud seeding only works about 30% of the time. And what they're doing is they're spraying particulates into the atmosphere, and it's attaching to the moisture droplets that are in the atmosphere already. And it brings what moisture's there down. There's no way that we can't inject moisture into the atmosphere itself. So cloud seeding only works if there's moisture there, and it's only going to work 30% of the time, and it's never going to produce, and it has never produced enough rain to cause flooding or to even really provide moisture for a field.
Yeah.
So it is not some grand conspiracy. It boils down to how much moisture is in the atmosphere to begin with. And 90% of the time it's hit and miss, and its only effects are very minuscule over a very small area. Exactly. Now they very well may be spraying us with other stuff, but they are not.
What about attempts to? We have terrible hail. I think we're the hail capital of the world. David, don't they tell us they see the clouds to try to bring up the hail?
Yeah.
Well, here in Calgary, they do it for hail because the size of the hail. So they do seeding, so it's not as big. That's
Yeah.
what I've learned from a couple of people who are in
Yeah.
environmental science. It's just to avoid, otherwise the damage would be far worse than what we have usually.
Yeah. Now I've heard that. With I don't know if they do it up in Canada, but down here we have what's called hail cannons. And the science behind them is sound. And basically what they do is they send very high frequencies and noises up into the cloud. And what it does is it disturbs that hail and prevents it from being able to, to clump and become a big hail ball. And it protects fields around farms and stuff like that. And it does work. I when I was learning about it, I was like, wow, is that really true? But they're using sonic technology to break apart kidney stones in people just using sound. And so it's sound science, and I think it's done a really good job to mitigate hail damage as far as the breadbasket of America goes. So it works.
There. No, I was just going to say they fly out of Crossfield here, north of the city, north of Calgary is where the base is. They're in Crossfield, and one of my sons is a friend with the guy that does the spotting for them.
Awesome, Jim.
Cool. Well, the thing with severe weather here in America is we can experience just about any type of weather that they would experience on the West Coast. We could experience it here. But geographically, storms are more intense in certain locations. Like out in the Midwest, they have bigger hail. They have more intense, long-lived tornadoes. Which all of that, I'm sure you guys might have heard how Tornado Alley is seemingly pushing further eastward. And scientifically speaking, that range moves throughout history back and forth. It's Earth has weather cycles. Like we're transitioning here in the Southeast to where we're getting more winter weather now. For the past 30 years, we've rarely seen snow. But when I was a kid 30 years ago, we had snow every year. Yeah. Have you guys heard of a storm system called a derecho?
Yes.
Yes.
Those are very intense lines of thunderstorms that pack hurricane force winds. Those can happen anywhere in the U.S. They do happen a lot up in the northern plains, up there, Chicago areas, Minnesota's had them. We had one here in Georgia last summer that I think they misclassified it, but it was a straight up derecho. We were out camping when it came through. It was very intense.
We had a derecho come through in South Dakota, and it pushed our house right off the foundation.
Yeah, they are so intense. And usually when they're coming through, they look like a big giant wall of dust. And you can Google or go on YouTube and look up videos of a derecho. and there is some really intense videos on there of this weather phenomenon. And some of those can pack, winds 200 miles an hour, and there's no tornado associated with it. It's just strong straight line winds.
Yep.
And it does so much damage that
Hmm.
it's just insane. The one we had here in Georgia was a little mild, but those can occur in Canada. They can occur here. In fact, I think the one that I think it was maybe last year or the year before, it impacted parts of Canada, Vancouver, and stuff like that. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it did.
I think you hit Vancouver, Tim. I think you're right.
Yeah, I believe
They
so.
call them something rivers. They're not atmospheric rivers. And on the west coast, yeah.
Yeah,
And they
atmospheric rivers.
but-
You usually get those a lot during their monsoon season down there, and it's just basically where the atmosphere is pulling in all that moisture from the Pacific, and it does bring a lot of flood and rainfall at one time over on the West Coast. But it, even though after the wildfires it causes a lot of flooding and stuff like that, it is beneficial, and they do need it.
Yep.
But there's it's just the way that human development stuff out there has just really, really messed with how weather interacts with the earth. So,
yeah.
and once you get all that flooding, especially after wildfire season or during wildfire season, it creates those mud flows and really, really big headaches. Wildfires can occur anywhere, but here in the US, we mostly see those more widespread out towards the West Coast. I know Canada had its share of wildfires
yes.
over the past few years as well.
Yep.
So, mhm.
What do you mean they're way overdue? I don't- Well, yeah.
Mhm. Something I've always wondered, maybe one of you guys can answer it for me. Down
Sure.
here in the Southeast and the East Coast in particular, we do what's called prescribed burning, to where every year they do large acre sections, especially national forest lands and stuff like that. Is that something that they do up there as well?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
They do quite a few of them in the Black Hills.
Yep.
So. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Can we ask either Caitlin or Timothy to show us some of their photos? Is that possible?
Yeah,
Hi,
I
Dan.
don't have
Welcome to Facebook
anything
page.
prepared or pulled up for you guys.
Tim, I have some too if you need them. I
Okay,
can send them to you.
You're more than welcome to share what you got. Were you wanting to see Northern Lights photos?
Yeah, they want to see the Northern Lights.
Okay, well, mine are on a different drive, and I don't.
I have
have that.
mine, Tim. Hang on, let me get to them.
Pull those up. We were the second round of Northern Lights that we got, and that's something I'll hit on too, real quick. Is space weather. Space weather does have an impact on weather here on Earth, and
Yep.
so something that we do is I'm always posting about solar storms and stuff like that. We just had a major X flare fly out the other day. And so you can follow spaceweather.com, and it shows you the solar activity, and they'll have a little warning system just like we have for severe weather on what type of magnetic storm we can expect. And it gives you an overview of what the auroras are going to look like, as well as a forecast with a little map that shows you where there should be visible. So
Tim?
that's something really cool.
Tim, there's a new alert that just went out now. Supposed to hit us February 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Just went
Yeah,
out.
that's on the X flare. I was talking, it's one of the largest that we just got hit with. Unfortunately, it was way too cold for us to go outside for that one. But it was the largest flare that had hit us in recorded history. And the sun is on a solar maximum right now. And I'm a space nerd in addition to weather nerd.
I'm with you, Tim.
So I follow all of that. But I'm not sure if anyone's heard of the Carrington event before. The Carrington event was like back in the early 18 or 1900s, where we just had telegraph going along, and the Earth was hit with such a major magnetic storm that it literally caught all of the telegraph wires on fire. It electrocuted telegraph operators, and they were able to send telegraphs, even though the wires were damaged, for hours and hours after that. So the one thing that scares me more than the weather, more than Donald Trump, excuse me, that scares me more than tornadoes and stuff is the sun. Because if we was to get hit with a solar flare like the Carrington event today, we would be in the Stone Age, and it would take years for us to get back to where we are today. And what it would do, just about every structure that has electrical wires in it would just catch on fire like a matchbox.
Yeah.
But it the energy and the particles from the sun supercharge any conductive material here on the planet. So while it's setting off those beautiful auroras, it's also supercharging every bit of conducted metal here on the planet. So, I just want to throw that out there.
Tim, I just sent them to you if you want to go ahead and pull them up.
Okay, give me just a second.
Hi, Tracy.
The haboobs. I'm not really too familiar with haboobs.
Nope.
Give me just a
Yeah.
No, because when I'm filming tornadoes, I don't photograph them. I use video. Yeah, I use video. And unfortunately, it's been a couple of years since I've been able to catch a tornado on video. Because we've just been in a dry spell down here in the south, and we haven't really went out west, but we are going out to Oklahoma this storm season. So we are definitely going to get plenty of photos and videos, and we're going to live stream too while we're out there. So
It's gonna be a fun year. It's gonna be
yeah,
fun.
it's going to be a very active storm season. I think it's going to be very active here in the southeast too. So
Well, I mean, there was two yesterday, Tim.
say that again.
I said there was two yesterday.
Yeah, well, the thing about tornadoes and severe weather, they can happen any time of year. We had a
Yeah.
tornado on Christmas Eve a couple of years back here.
Yep.
So a bona fide tornado, it actually blew my sister's garage over. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Ooh. Whoa, no.
you know, I would have did the same thing. I wouldn't have thought about that. Now, I was in a ton of sandstorms when I was in Iraq, and they were pretty intense. I'll try to get some of my photos posted up on my Facebook page of that. But I've got this one photo of a little bitty American flag, like one of the desk flags, that's sticking in a post in the middle of the sandstorm. So, and the dust devils out there in the middle of the desert are just beautiful. They're just tall, dusty. They look like tornadoes. They look like a Texas tornado. And on any given day, you can see 12 of them out over the desert. It's just really beautiful, really beautiful. So, yeah, I've heard the term haboob, but just off the top of my head, I don't know what that is. Oh yeah, I was actually when I had to medically evacuate, it was the Canadian Air Force who brought me home. So yeah. Yeah. They treated me very well, very well.
Well, we're gonna get back to normal times again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, hopefully.
I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead, Jim.
Is there three little guys smoking a joint in some way off place that come up with the names for all these meteorological events that take place in the world? Or are they the
I
same
think
guys?
so, Jim. I believe so.
Are they the guys that maybe pick the paint chips for Home Depot too? The same guys? I think it's just as easy. I never
Exactly.
understand
I say this,
atmospheric rivers and polar vortexes and all kinds of things that showed up on us.
it's kind of like
Never
animal
heard of it.
names. It's like, why do it have to be so complicated?
Thank
Yeah.
you very much for tonight.
You're very welcome. I was glad to be able to pop in here and join you guys. If I had more time to prepare, I'd have prepared more slides and stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah, well,
maybe I'll come back in the future. So
yeah, with
Yes,
your
you did,
pictures.
Tim.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, thank you.
that sounds great. Definitely. Mm. Yeah. And if you guys would like me to come back in the future, just reach out to me. I have your Facebook now. So especially during storm season, I'll have some great stuff for you guys.
They're probably there. I have about 3 other storm chasers that are on watching, so it's probably my buddies.
Where are you from, Susie?
He's from
Stacy?
one that's for you.
No,
I'm sorry. I'm from Gainesville, Georgia. I currently live in Commerce, Georgia. That's where we're based at right now.
I was
Little
asking
small town.
Stacy, where are you from in South Dakota?
I am in Sioux Falls, just outside of Sioux Falls.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm from the northern part of South Dakota. That's what I was asking.
Oh, wow.
From
That's where I want to retire to, even though I'm retired now.
There's lots of tornadoes
I'm
here.
going to
so-
retire out that
Oh,
way eventually.
you can't retire. We need you.
My time is totally invested in weather, so that's what I do.
Well, you'll get plenty of tornadoes here in South Dakota.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely. Thank you.
It was
Thanks,
great to
Susan.
meet
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yes.
On it.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes. Cool.
Sounds good.
Right.
Awesome.
Thank you, David.
Look forward to it. Hey,
Good
Tracy.
seeing you too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Bye.